So in the last demo, we showed you how you can resize the server that your application is running on in real time with zero expertise and very minimal effort. So this time we're going to build on that, and we're going to show you how you can actually take pieces of your application, so your web application, in this case we don't have a database, but if you had a database, and also some of your platform components, and how you can actually pull them out of the individual server here into their own servers, or how you can quickly scale up to a multi-node cluster. So let's get started. So we've got our application here the same application we've been using all along. And if I open up the app components, I can see that I have a web process. And also I can see here that this has been up long enough that we're starting to see historical health coming through. But even though everything would tend to look like it's healthy, for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to scale it up anyways. So I get started by clicking on Move, and I'm presented with two options. One, I can immediately break this out into a horizontal cluster, or I can just put this onto another single server. So right now what I want to show is how we can do this with a horizontal cluster. So we click Next, and the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to choose the size of each individual instance. So I can go back to that ½ gig of RAM, or I can go up to a 1 gig, and then I specify how many I want. So in this case, let's choose 3. And so I'm going to launch 3. It's going to launch 3 of those on my DigitalOcean account. And what I will notice is this is the first time that I need to upgrade my application. Nanobox is built in a way that you can launch unlimited applications with a minimal subscription, and only when I need to do some production level when I need production level functionality do I actually need to upgrade. So I go back in here, move this out, follow the same process, choose my 1 gig of RAM, 3, and this time I'll actually be allowed to do that. So as we saw in the previous cases, or in the previous two demonstrations, we saw the heads-up display informing us that it was launching new servers. This is no different, with the one exception that now we're launching multiple. So you'll see that Nanobox is now launching 3 new servers on my account, and then it's going to provision all of them. And just like we saw in the previous examples, it's going that part of the provisioning process is applying or installing updates, applying a firewall, configuring a virtual network, installing Docker, and additionally, this happens in these scenarios. Doesn't happen in all the scenarios, but because we're ordering additional servers, it's actually going to Nanobox is going to go to each individual server, and it is going to tell it, hey, you need to be able to talk to this server. So it kind of handles the firewalling for each of these new servers. Okay, so while that's doing that, I can minimize the heads-up display, and I want to do something else here. I want to show that you can actually take your platform components as well. So let's say my the message bus where I get my live updates, or even a warehouse or logger. Let's take in this case our logger, and let's say that I actually want to move this logger, and I can actually move this logger onto its own server, and I can give it its own specifications as well. and I just need to confirm that I will lose my logs for no, I won't lose my logs, but I will for the duration of the migration that my logs won't be available, and I'll go ahead and handle that. So now you can pop this open and see that Nanobox is going to ensure that we finish migrating the web nodes out first before we actually move the logger onto a new cluster. So looks like we're just about done here. We're just installing Docker images, and that just kind of depends on the speed of the underlying provider. Sometimes the network's fast, sometimes it's slow, and some for whatever reason, some nodes do that faster than others. Really just kind of depends on the placement and the network configuration of the underlying provider. And in this case, I'm using DigitalOcean, and not really sure why some would be faster than others, but it seems to be consistent across all providers. Okay, so the last one, the last instance is being configured and started. And once they have all been started and they're all running, the load balancer gets updated, and then the previous instance, which was running on that shared server there, actually gets removed. So that's gone, and we now have a scalable web cluster. So just to kind of show you, verify that the application still functions, and in fact there was no downtime during that process, because while the new cluster was being built out, the previous instance was serving the requests. And so now that's completely up and running. We now have a scalable cluster for handling our webs, and Nanobox is continuing to process the next request, which was to move our logger onto its own server. And that's running the very same process that we've seen a couple of times now. So while it's doing that, let's go ahead and look. Now that we have a cluster, it does look different, and we can see here that we can adjust the scale at any time of this cluster. We can add more or we can add less. Really at any time we can adjust the scale. We can also adjust the size of each individual node, and then when I click save, it'll run the same process and then update the routing mesh at the very end. And now that it's on its own cluster, we also see that we can open up each individual host within that cluster, and we get a unique breakdown of each of the stats. And we're actually going to go into the health monitoring and health introspection in a later demo. But for now, just wanted to show that we can actually drill down into this cluster, into each individual instance here. And if we wanted to, we could even move it all back. And we'll do that here at the very end. And lastly, looks like our logger has made it over. So as you can see here, hopefully what we've been able to show is that with Nanobox, I was very easily able to take my application, at least the web component, and I was able to break it outside of this individual server onto a scalable cluster. And now I have three individual nodes that are all being round robin to, so I can serve traffic better. And I was also able to move one of the platform components, the logger, off of the first server and onto its own server. So I can even scale out the platform. And with that all in place, the last thing that I'm just going to show here is how easily I can put it all back together. So I can actually take this horizontal cluster and I can say, you know what, never mind. I want to put it back on the host that it was on. And in this case, it's quite a bit quicker because we're not having to order and configure any new servers. We're just popping up a new container on the existing server, and then lastly we'll cancel those servers. So looks like that's been updated. The load balancer has now switched the routing, and those previous servers are gone. The application is still responding, and now we're back on that one server. And I can do the same thing here. I can actually take this platform component, move it right back where it was on that existing host, and I am going to have to confirm the data migration that our logs will be unavailable during the migration process. But we can see here that it's going to be coming back onto that that individual one. So now it's migrating data last. It's so nice to it's just such a weight off of your mind to just think about how Nanobox is moving all this stuff around, and it's manipulating these servers for you, including migrating all of the data. So one of the things that just is generally extremely tedious and also error prone, scary, and in some cases it's really insecure. And so Nanobox has taken care of all of those and solved each of those problems. And then it's going to remove that server for us. And hopefully this has been, oh, you know what, I have to actually tell the server to be removed now that there's nothing on it. I can do that. And now we're back to where we started. So hopefully this has been insightful to show you how you can start with a simple your simple application, very, very small scale, 512 megs of RAM. You can resize the server, or you can break each individual piece onto their own server, scale it up, scale it down, bring it all right back around, however you want to do it, and it's all real time and just in time for your big marketing push or promotion or whatever it is. But ultimately, it's completely flexible and up to you to drive without any expertise required. So thanks again for joining, and we have some really cool stuff coming up, so I would encourage you to stay tuned. Thanks.